Oh, no, 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 no. We're not doing this. We're not doing this.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know this beat, it's your girl Kyrie B coming at you with a new video. So today I'm going to be talking about Love is Blind Season 4 Episode 13. Basically, the not so live reunion. The reunion that was supposed to be live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the 16th of April. That was not live at all. That started basically almost an hour and a half later and was not available to us on Netflix until 3 p.m. Eastern the next day, which people had to watch live streams from people who were in the audience to actually see the live reunion. Like, let's just talk about that, because Netflix was very much off its game. We like the memes, the tweets that happened last night, because they did not have their live reunion as planned live. They were talking about technical difficulties. They're like, we'll be back in 15 minutes, be back in 30 minutes. You know, it's going to be a little late. You know what I'm saying? You know, you got other streaming services basically, you know, whacking them like, you know, if it was us, we would have been on, you know, on their game. But, you know, Netflix fell, and obviously people had other things to do when 9 p.m. hit. So that live reunion was not live at all. But I was able to watch the reunion as I did. And let me just talk about it. So we're going to start with how the reunion started. The reunion was basically like 90 minutes, an hour and a half. And they obviously started with, you know, Tiffany and Brett. Obviously, the faves. Basically talked about them for the shortest part of, and basically the shortest time. You know, they kind of joked around about, you know, Brett and, you know, his fitted suit, you know, him looking fly, his shoes, you know, is his suit custom made, things of that nature. And, you know, they're still happily married. You know, it's been a year since the wedding. And it was basically that. You know, Brett and Tiffany did not have any type of drama at all. The only thing that was basically as big for them was Tiffany sleeping in the pods. And, you know, they joked about that, you know, showed the clip of her sleeping, and that was that. You know, they had very much the quickest segment. So then we kind of moved on the first triangle, which was Chelsea, Kwame, and Micah. So Micah basically, you know, they showed a clip of, you know, Chelsea and Micah talking about, you know, what happened in Mexico and, you know, like what was that all about? You know, and they basically, you know, talked it out, hugged, and basically moved on from it. That clip was never shown in the show, but it just basically showed like how, you know, Micah was wrong for like kind of, you know, talking over 20 minutes with Kwame, because, you know, Chelsea was like, I thought you broke up with him and he broke up with you and all that stuff. And, you know, so they took like a good 20 minutes talking about, you know, Micah and Kwame. So, you know, I guess Nick was trying to understand, like, you know, is it true that, you know, you were trying to break up with Micah? Like, oh, when you were in the pods, you just seemed like kind of emotional. And it was like, I guess mentioned later that Kwame actually written out that he was actually going to break up with Micah. But when Micah ended it with him, he wasn't ready. He was like, I guess, off guard a bit. So he was basically explaining that, you know, they still had something, you know, they still had a deep connection and he was still hurt by it. So that's why he's emotional. But he, you know, he was talking about that either way, he was going to end it with Micah as well as Micah ending it with him. That was basically that. You know, Kwame basically took accountability of how he was chatting to Micah. You know, he shouldn't have chatted to her for over 20 minutes as well. So he was not just letting Micah take the heat for it. So then they showed basically a clip of Irina and Micah basically being the mean girls. So, showing Irina, kind of laughing at Amber while she was crying about the breakup with Paul, showed both Micah and Irina, laugh or, not feel empathetic or sympathetic to, I guess, Jackie crying after something that happened, I believe. So they were basically showing the real of Irina. Before we even get to Irina, we also have to chat with Bliss and Zach. So Bliss and Zach is also still happily married, everything's going well for them. They talked about how, they're still good. Bliss's father is giving them a honeymoon for them to go to Panama. They're doing well. He was basically talking about how the song, I Hope We Dance, was basically like their song. Like, the lyrics in that song basically matches what happens in his relationship. How he's basically was scared how him and Bliss will be able to overcome the mountains and whatnot. So, that's why he most likely diverted to picking Irina. So back to Irina. Irina comes out on stage and, there was like boos and whatnot. And she was kind of emotional, which the crowd basically kind of like were laughing at her because they're like, you need a minute. Like, we just saw a reel of you being mean to girls who are crying and feeling sad. And, now that you are feeling sad and having tears in your eyes, you need a minute. So they were kind of laughing at her. So they're basically, she was basically saying like, she was going through a lot and, she's now grown from it. And then, they went on further to talk about how she treated Zach, how she put the pillow over her face, when Zach was trying to talk to her. There was also talking about how, she treated Zach in a relationship, which was not great at all, which we've seen, some of it. So, Zach basically kind of spoke his piece. He was like, you basically came on the show to get famous. Like, you did not came on the show with true intentions. So they also mentioned when they were breaking up with each other, how she said that she wanted to leave Zach when she first saw him, which is just like, when you see that, why did you continue to go on this honeymoon with him if you were ready to, go? Because Zach said that, Irina never treated him properly in that relationship at all. You basically came on to get famous. So she was like, oh, I feel hurt by that. I feel hurt and this and that. Like, I feel like I feel bad that you feel that way and blah, blah, blah. So, Zach was just like, you did not treat me well at all in that relationship. He was just like, yeah. So then Bliss was like, listening to Irina give her excuses, like she having a panic attack, this and that and the third. So Bliss basically told her, you can have all your excuses, but that doesn't negate to your actions. She's saying it's more powerful to take accountability than to give your excuses. You know what I'm saying? She's like, Bliss was just like, I hope you've grown from this. She was just being very classy. And then also what she said was that, Irina sent a text to Bliss stating that she dodged a bullet from Zach. And then she texted Zach saying like, oh, I hope you and Bliss work out. So they're basically bringing that up, but Bliss didn't really want to dwell on it because obviously, her and Zach are in a good place. They moved on from that, but, that's what Irina did. She texted Bliss and told her that she dodged a bullet. And the thing is that, it's like Irina did not give, from what we've seen, she did not give any effort into that relationship. I feel like that was probably the most accurate portrayal of what went down between Zach and Irina. Her not really caring to what he has to say, not listening to what he has to say or whatever. So obviously they were classy in reading Irina. Everybody was just like hoping that she'll grow. They didn't really want to, dwell on it. Zach also said that, it's already enough that a lot of these people they have their lives, on film of how they acted and behaved. So they wanted to, Zach wanted to, I guess, give a little bit of grace to not really, do her in, and, what she did to them. He said, I have receipts, but I'm not going to really talk about them like that. So he's willing to give grace, but he's like, he knows the truth. He knows what happened. He knows what went down. And he's like, it's already enough that, for the rest of their lives, that what they did is on camera. How they behaved and what they acted is on camera. So he was just basically giving grace. So then we go to Chelsea and Kwame. And, Chelsea basically gives, her anecdotes of how she met Kwame's mother. And Kwame's mother, had open arms for her. They met at Thanksgiving. She got to talk to Kwame's nieces and things of that nature. And, then one of the nieces at Thanksgiving was like, I'm happy for my Aunt Chelsea. And it was just like they have basically a sweet, interaction between Kwame's family and Chelsea. So she, seems like everything's doing fine. All that. Also, back to Brett and Tiffany. When nobody ever said in the show that Brett lived in Portland. Everybody basically were like, Kwame lives in Portland and the show's in Seattle. Like, if he knew what show he was getting on, he shouldn't be complaining to Chelsea about the commute and stuff like that. But I'm like, Brett lives in Portland as well, and he's on this show. So nobody knew until the reunion, until Brett said out of his mouth that he lives in Portland, and he had to make like a 3-hour commute, sometimes to and from work and stuff like that. So it's kind of like very interesting that was very hidden from us, because we know definitely that Kwame was from Portland. So it's kind of like interesting to see now that Brett also as well lived in Portland, or I don't know if they relocated or if Tiffany's full-time in Portland, whichever. But yeah, so I'm not sure, because the show never really basically made that distinction that, his apartment was in Portland. But that's with them. That was basically the end of Tiffany and Brett. So obviously the big thing, let's talk about this, because I'm kind of just like, you had all this bark about Marshall basically slandering his name all over social media. And there's a time when they was like, this is going to be a live reunion. This is going to be a reunion on April 16th. You could say your piece to Marshall. You're with your new boo thing, which is Josh, who you've been with for a year. You and Josh could have been like, let's go up, pull up to the reunion, say their piece, whatever. Josh over here talking about what he has to say, he will say it to your face, but you hiding it behind a camera screen on a Zoom call, talking about you can't pull up to a reunion. Anyway, obviously Jackie and Josh did not pull up to reunion. Very much scary behavior, if I may say. Obviously everybody was waiting for that. So that was the biggest thing of the reunion, was to see the Jackie and Marshall, like what's going to be said, how are they going to squash the situation. So before Marshall can even say his piece, they showed, a pod conversation between Jackie and Josh. Not even giving Marshall and Jackie's relationship a time of day. I guess they were just looking towards the relationships that actually are still continuing on. But they gave a pod conversation between Jackie and Josh, which I guess Marshall had to see on screen. And then, Vanessa says that she interviewed Jackie the day before the reunion. So the first thing that Jackie says was that, she did not cheat on Marshall. She broke up with Marshall before she went on the date with Josh. I still don't believe that's true, because when she broke up with Josh, when she broke up with Marshall, she told Marshall she went to go see Josh at the coffee shop. Literally her words. So for her to basically say, no, I did not cheat on Marshall, I actually ended it with him before we went to the coffee shop, which is just like, I still don't think that's true, because the words that you used in breaking up with Marshall was that you went to go see Josh. That's why you weren't at the dress fitting. You see? Because I'm just like, I know producers are not giving you, clips to say. They want it to be as authentic as they can. So, what's the truth? What's the truth? So that was the first thing she basically mentioned. Then she also mentioned how Marshall said something, a derogatory term that might have been a joke about her. So that's what she said. So this is all, being said within 2-3 minutes without Marshall being able to say his piece. Marshall's listening to it. He's giving his reactions like, what are you saying? So that's what she said. He said some type of derogatory term. Vanessa asked about the ring. You still have the ring? And she said, yeah, she still has the ring. She still has the ring. So, and then she said that he wanted the ring back because he wanted to propose to another girl. So that's what Jackie told Vanessa, that the reason why he wanted the ring back was to propose to another girl. Which is not adding up. You're listening to these and you're just like, you're not making any sense. You're not making any sense. Then the last thing that Vanessa asked as an interviewer to Jackie was like, oh, if her and Josh are thinking of making some JJs, children. And I'm just like, okay, we're not really getting to the, whatever. And then she asked Jackie, I guess the last things was like, oh, what would you like to say to Marshall? And she said, oh, for Marshall to take accountability and for her to take accountability. So I guess Jackie's still dwelling on, Marshall saying derogatory term about Jackie. That's the only thing that she says. She said that also that, before the dress, fitting, she was basically done with Marshall. So she knew. And then she also said that on Chelsea, Josh was explaining himself that how the reason why he acted at Chelsea's party was that he was trying to lose weight for some competition. So he's basically drinking on an empty stomach. So these were all said in that 2-3 minute video interview that Vanessa Lachey gave to Jackie and Josh. So, she basically, after that interview, she came back to the audience and the cast. And she was basically like, oh, let this marinate, blah, blah, blah. Because obviously it was a lot. And obviously because Marshall was giving his, facial reactions and whatnot. So Marshall was like, okay, I have a lot to say. But first it's kind of unfair that she's not here. She's not here. I can't have basically a back and forth with her to actually talk. You know what I'm saying? She's not here. So basically, with that being said, she's not here. He didn't get a chance to say his piece. So he's basically just talking to whatever Vanessa's asking. So Vanessa basically asked him about the whole cheating thing. So he's like, oh, what do you have to say to that? And she's like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter if it was a day before or a day after, you broke up with me and the next day you're kissing somebody else. So it was just like, it doesn't matter if it was a day before or a day after. It doesn't really matter. So he just said okay to that. So then the next thing that she asked was what derogatory term? So basically Marshall was just trying to line up the situation. Because obviously if you've seen the text messages that were leaked from Jackie, that she was basically calling Marshall sweet or fruity or some type of kind, and laughing and joking about it. So she, Vanessa was like, oh yeah, that's what she said, but what did you say? So he's like, yeah, I'm getting to that. So when they were talking out loud, she was saying those things to his face. So the derogatory term that Jackie claimed to said that Marshall said to her was that Marshall basically said, I said that she has a strong jaw. And basically they were saying, he thought that since they were comfortable enough, they were comfortable enough that for her to say all those things to him, him basically saying that maybe you had a strong jaw in, a joking manner or whatever was fair game. So, he said that he never said any derogatory term. He never used any, term like that. He just said jawline. So, you got Vanessa over here, like, saying, like, I don't know how I feel if he said that about me. And so now, like, basically kind of, feeling like Jackie was in the right. But, like, if Jackie's over here talking down on him, you don't think it's, like, how, in this whole situation, Marshall's been very classy in how he responded to what happened. So if all he said in this was, previously he called her a project and then said that she had a strong jawline, like, with everything that Jackie did, Marshall, I don't see that it doesn't add up to anything big for how she treated him at all. If you're telling that to his face and he just basically clapped back at you with something that was, something that may have hurt you, I don't think that's fair, because obviously he felt hurt by what you were saying. So obviously, in a joking manner, he said that. So he said what he said, Vanessa feeling some type of way, whatever. So then she asked about, like, oh, why would he want the ring back? So Marshall said to her that the ring was basically a symbol of their, love, of their connection. And he picked out that ring specifically for Jackie. So he wanted that ring back because he wanted, she didn't deserve his, love. Basically, that's what he said. Like, it's not because what she claims to say that, Marshall wanted the ring back to propose to Keisha. Because that's what she's saying, that how Marshall, wanted to propose to Keisha and dated for 2 more weeks on the show and wanted to be on the show. That's what she's saying, how Marshall, I'm just like, Marshall been about Jackie since the pods. He even said how, if he wanted, Josh to pack up and leave, he would have helped him. We never heard Marshall talk about any other girl from the pods as, passionately as Jackie at all. So for her to actually claim and say how, he wanted this ring to come propose to Keisha is very absurd. Like, he even said that's very absurd. Like, why would I want the ring back, for that to propose to somebody else? He just said he wanted the ring back because she didn't deserve the ring, because I picked it out specifically for her. And for her to actually basically boastfully say after a whole entire year she still has the ring that Marshall gave her is kind of like, why would you want a ring that another man gave you while you're still with this Josh guy for over a year? It does not make any sense at all. So then, obviously, that was said. So then, Vanessa was like, oh, do you have anything to say to Jackie? And he was like, I have a lot to say, but I will say this, is that, let's just, end this, feud or whatever we're having, this tit for tat we're having, she's on social media chatting bad about him, and, he's not really saying anything much about her, and the fact that she brought up this derogatory term to a live reunion, that he didn't really have a chance to really have this back and forth, with her, to basically try to cancel, in a way to cancel Marshall, to say, like, how, he said something very, 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 like, disrespectful, is kind of like, what was the purpose of that? You know what I'm saying? Like, you were saying very derogatory words about Marshall, as you said, and because he said what he said to you is kind of like, oh, he was the bad guy all along in the relationship, which is just like, anyway. So he talked about it. He said that I guess the day before his family came to visit, and he already apologized. He said he would never say that again. And that was it. So he thought it was deaded. So for that to be brought up in the reunion was just like, why are you even bringing that up? So you were just like, you have a new dude, you okay, you kosher. Like, there's no need for us to keep on doing this. Like, I don't have any feelings for you, and you clearly don't have any feelings for me. So just like end it. So that was basically it. You know, it was basically Vanessa kind of like showing that, you know, she didn't really care about what, you know, Jackie did and said to Marshall, but because she was also asking Marshall, like, oh, did you consider her feelings of why she didn't come to the reunion? If Irina can show up to reunion and Micah can show up to reunion, you know, even though Irina was literally the villain, can show up to the reunion, Micah can show up to the reunion, and you over here, you know, been a year with your guy Josh, you two couldn't show up to the reunion? Like, what feelings were you considering that he had to consider? Like let's call a spade a spade. What feelings did he had to consider? Like, he showed up to the reunion. Why couldn't Jackie and Josh show up to the reunion? They didn't have nothing better to do. It was not like they had a big important event. They chose not to show up to the reunion. They chose to do a Zoom meeting and speak behind a screen to Marshall. Wow. And then you have Josh over here talking about he will say something to your face. Very confused. But that was it. It was very lackluster because, you know, Marshall was just like, you know, Jackie robbed him twice of having a proper dialogue. So obviously, you know, Vanessa just seemed like not a really good interviewer at all. She just seemed like she was very biased, and she was basically, oh, very happy that Josh and Jackie are all cool and good and whatnot. So it just didn't really seem proper at all. It just seemed like, you know, she kind of piled it on Marshall, and for Marshall to like hold, you know, carry, you know, everything that went wrong in the relationship, and just like didn't really feel right. Also, back to Micah, Paul, their relationship. So Micah was basically left at the altar, and, you know, they asked her if Paul said he would have married, if said yes at the altar, would have married him? And she said, yeah, she was gonna say yes, but she needed that, you know, a clarity, or that, you know, affirming whatever of knowing that he really do care about her. And they asked Paul, like, if she never flipped it on you, would you have said yes? And he said, well, he didn't want to, he's going to say no. He's going to keep this answer the same because he doesn't really want to base his answer on somebody else's answer. So that's what Paul had to say. You know, Paul was just basically not really, I would say, he just seemed not more remorseful. Like, oh, they're asking Paul, like, how he said at the end that he didn't see Micah as a nurturing mother. And, you know, they're asking, you know, Micah, like, how did you feel about that? And, you know, Micah said that she didn't even hear Paul talk about it to her. So she was basically blindsided, like, how they never even discussed this. And then, like, on the Friday episode that dropped, that's when she found out that, you know, that was one of the reasons that he said no. So then Zach tried to, you know, basically stand up for Paul and basically say, like, Micah's over here, like, you know, tearing up and feeling bad. And they were like, you know, Paul was over here, like, you're kind of getting off easy, because when the Irina Micah thing clip shown, Irina basically took 100% of all the backlash. You know, Micah didn't even have to talk about that, because Irina's action to Amber and the girls in the pause, and then her actions to Zachary basically overtook everything about the whole situation, even though it was Micah and Irina were like the two duo. They were asking Paul about, you know, when Irina was flirting with Paul, like, you know, did you cross any boundaries? And, you know, Paul was just saying, like, I felt, you know, secure in my relationship with Micah, that I didn't really, you know, I didn't think I, you know, crossed anything. Like, you know, I was just having a conversation. You know, that's why I didn't feel any way when Kwame and Mike were having a chat. You know what I'm saying? So they were like, oh, did you feel like you crossed any boundaries? Did you feel like you were doing something wrong? And, you know, as Paul is, he's just not really, showing pretty much any remorse. Like, you take accountability, like, maybe I should have worded that better. But he's just like, he's going to stick with his decision. He doesn't feel like, oh, I'm sorry or whatever. He didn't really, I don't think he apologized to Micah. He just said, like, I probably would have said no. And it is what it is. Like, that's how the cookies crumble, and I think Paul, Zachary was just like, Micah's over here trying to make herself a victim. I think that was the word that he was looking for. Instead of, like, I don't think she was trying to, like, badger Paul, but I think she was just trying to make her seem like, oh, she's the blindsided, person who was left off the altar, even though she was the one who walked away from him at the altar. They also revealed that they did try to date after, the marriage, the wedding thing, and they, I guess, had a couple occurrences, and then after the second occurrence, they ended it. So, Paul said something very like, our relationship ended over 12 months ago. So just kind of like, why does it even matter? Like, it doesn't even matter. Zachary was saying how Micah didn't really show a lot of interest, like when she was talking about it to the other girls about marrying Paul. So it just seems like, her tearing up about Paul not marrying her is kind of like, you're doing too much now. But that was basically the reunion. The reunion's very lackluster. Vanessa Lachey and Nick Lachey. Well, Nick doesn't do that much talking, but Vanessa Lachey should not be interviewing the cast. Seems like obviously she's very removed from the cast, and she does get her information from social media. She basically allowed Kwame to talk about his Alex Kwame name situation, and he obviously, Alex Kwame is actually his name. So Kwame basically said that he does like really cares and love his name. It's just how the editors put it in was making it seem like he didn't care about it and whatever. Kwame didn't hire an actress to play his sister. That was actually his real sister. I don't even think that actress thing was true either, because I'm just like, why would an actress, talk about growing up with Kwame and, like, being his second mother and stuff like that? Like, no actress would try to do that. Like, it was very believable, and they look alike. Like, Kwame and his sister look very much alike. So, like, that whole actress thing just seemed out of, the way. They obviously showed, like, the clips of all the married couples. All the married couples are still in touch with each other. They're still going on, like, triple dates with each other. They were showing each other's apartments and stuff like that. They're all pretty much good with each other. So it was very nice to see, all of them being, happily married. And it was very nice to see. Other than that, that was basically the reunion. That was Love is Blind season 4. That reunion was not that great. Yeah. I would say their season as a whole definitely was an upgrade from the past 2 seasons. And if they have a season 5, I will definitely be watching season 5. Anyway, guys, if you like the video, comment down below any of your thoughts, comments, concerns, and you guys subscribe to my channel, subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. Peace.